now, City TV 19 presents Senior Moments.
Welcome. And in the past Senior Moment shows, we've had interviews with many photographers, and they have shown lots of beautiful scenery, wonderful floral pictures. But today, we have a photographer of a different style, Joan Zald, who is the author of a photo book, Portraits of Creative Aging. Joan, thank you for coming to the studio.
Thank you for having me.
Now, documentary photography is a term. How does that apply to what you do?
Well, I think some of my work might be considered documentary photography. I usually don't think of myself in quite that way. I tend to see myself as taking portraits that I see as environmental portraits, so that the environment tells the viewer something about the person and something about their life or their situation.
Wow, interesting. But before we get too far into the photographs, how about a little bit of your background and how did you wind up in Ann Arbor?
Well, I'm originally from New York City. I was born there and raised there, and I came to Ann Arbor as a freshman at U of M.
Good place.
Yes, and got both my bachelor's degree and master's in social work here. And I met my husband here, who was a graduate student at the time, and we eventually left Ann Arbor, moved to Chicago, then Nashville, Tennessee, and then came back here to Ann Arbor when he had a faculty appointment at the university.
This doesn't sound like the beginning of photography.
No.
How did the photographic start?
Well, I should tell you first that my professional career was as a clinical social worker. Eventually, when I started taking photography classes, I found myself gradually trying to merge photography with my social work background and my interest in social problems and social issues.
That would get into this book, Portraits of the Homeless?
Yes.
That was the very beginning.
No, well, actually, it was not quite the very beginning. I started earlier with this group of booklets on parent education, which was geared towards low literacy teenagers who had children of their own. And it was very difficult to find literature that addressed the reading level and the sophistication of these young people. And so the Corner Health Center that published these booklets basically wrote their own text. And I was the photographer that provided the photos for each page of text to illustrate the text. And that's how I got started.
And now you've gone on to creative portraits of aging.
Yes.
And how did it start in with the aging?
Well, I, in the process of my own aging, was looking for positive models, role models of aging. And as I started looking, I became very, very interested in people who were doing very creative and very productive things in their retirement years. And so I started interviewing them and photographing them, getting to know them. And I found that, and I think the research literature supports it, that people who in retirement are so engaged tend to have a greater sense of wellness and a very high quality of life.
Also, it helps to make them live a little bit longer.
Well, probably.
How about this gentleman over here with the musical instruments? Can you tell me a little about him?
His name is Dean. He is from Waverly, Tennessee. I should mention that as I worked on this creative aging project, I went around the country interviewing people as well. So it wasn't just southeastern Michigan. And so he was in this very, very rural town, and in his retirement went back to what was his first love, which was woodworking, but he also started getting very interested in making musical instruments, and eventually became very, very skilled at making what he called fiddles.
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 Which is basically a violin.
Yes. But in the country music world that he supplied instruments for, these were fiddles.
I can see banjo in the
right,
photograph.
And there's also a dulcimer there. And this, I feel, is an example of what I'm talking about with environmental portraiture. I wanted to capture him in his work area, which he felt was his favorite place to be, working on a fiddle.
In addition to this gentleman here with the musical instruments, can I hear you talk a little bit about this lady who is in the schoolroom? She looks fascinating.
Yes. Her name is Carrie, and Carrie, when I took this picture, was 84 years old. And she is a member of a group of storytellers in New York City. They're called Pearls of Wisdom, and they refer to themselves as the Pearls. And these are all elderly, yes, yes. These are elderly storytellers. They're actually a group of 6 of them. And they go around speaking in schools and shelters and libraries and community centers, telling stories about their lives. And since they are of an age that they have had quite a lot of experience, the students and those who are listening to them really get a sense of what life was so many decades ago.
Do the students really ask significant questions of them?
Well, in this case, Carrie came from South Carolina and was one of many children in a sharecropper's family. And this was during the time of segregation and Jim Crow laws. And the children were in a civics class. These are high school kids in a civics class learning about that period in time in our country.
That's their heritage.
And she came in and made it all real for them. Up till that point, they had just been reading in textbooks. And she started talking about her own personal experiences. And they were very, very moved by this. And in fact, when they came into the classroom, I was thinking, oh my goodness, how is she going to handle these kids? They seemed sort of unruly, and there was a lot of horseplay. And then she started talking, and they fell silent, and she had them in the palm of her hands. They were spellbound.
Sounds like she was a very good storyteller.
She was excellent.
Not only about storytelling, but also about her own personal life and her experiences.
Absolutely. And it was so moving to me to see, after she finished talking, these teenagers went up to her and hugged her and thanked her, and it was very, very beautiful to watch.
Excellent, excellent. How about this lovely lady down here to your right, with her hand on her chin and a beautiful hat?
Yes.
That is a fascinating photograph.
Right. Her name is Sally. She had been a school teacher. She was 75 years old when I interviewed her, and she had moved to California from Chicago after her husband's death because she had a daughter living in LA. And she got an apartment in the Burbank Senior Artists Colony, even though she had never done anything in terms of art or performing. And but she started taking drama classes there, and it just, she just got so excited about it and decided she really did have some dramatic abilities. And she was particularly good at comedy. She had a great comedic style. And so I wanted to capture that in the picture.
I think you did.
Yes, well, thank you. Shades of Minnie Pearl, right?
A little bit.
Yeah.
Not everybody's going to remember
Minnie Pearl, but
she looks like a very capable actress.
Yeah, I think she really was. And interestingly enough, an independent filmmaker had just cast her in a film that he was doing in Hollywood, in which she had a role of an elderly lady.
I wouldn't have believed that.
Yeah.
Of course she would.
Yes. So it was a pleasure to actually meet all these people. They were very, very inspiring.
Are you working in digital or film now?
I started out in film, and actually I used to develop and print my own black and white work. And then at some point in time, I found that it was really necessary, given the kind of work I do, to move to digital. I did
it's a whole lot easier.
It's a lot easier, but I had developed a real craftsmanship about in the darkroom, and that was a little difficult to give up, to be honest.
Now these portraits that you have here, this is only a very small part of what you have on exhibit.
Right.
Would you talk about that one?
Right. I should mention first that the book has, I think, 37 interviews and portraits.
Interviews as well as photos.
Right, right. And the interviews, what I did with the interviews, I tended to interview people for a few hours, taped the interviews, and then of course edited it down, but kept it in the first person. So I wanted the person's voice to be speaking. And it was after these interviews that I then took the photos.
And then these are on exhibit at the Turner Center.
Yes, these are on exhibit. The book itself has 37 stories and portraits. The exhibit, I think, has 26. That was all the wall space that was there.
Book, to kind of stimulate some of our viewers here a little bit, you have also written another book. Would you talk about this one? This one happens to be something about Egypt and you personally.
Right, it does. This is a brand new book. It was published last month. And it's basically a memoir, and it's based on a 5-year period in my life. I should mention that while I was interviewing the people for the Creative Aging book, I became aware of the fact that so many of them had written their memoirs or autobiographies. And this, at a certain age, is a very important thing to do because it helps one reflect upon one's life and, gain a certain perspective. And so here I was, after completing this project, finding myself wanting to write this memoir about this 5-year period.
And your roots, as I recall, did something to do with your father.
Yes, my father was Egyptian. He was an Egyptian Muslim. And I was searching for his family during this 5-year period.
And you found all kinds of information.
I did indeed, yes.
Oh, that's
yes.
good, very good. Today we have had Joan Zald, a photographer and author of Portraits of Creative Aging. This is Joe Medrano. Thank you for watching Senior Moments.